Yes, you are now listening to the sounds Sports Reports is ordered. And those sounds are brought to you by the one and only, the world famous, the world renowned, born in Texas, raised in VA, representing everything New Jerusalem. And he said that the only reason that Ace Bailey hasn't worked out for anybody is because he's still trying to end up in Jersey somehow. Go Nets. You know, he is Mr. Logical. Don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
Then, of course, it is I down here in the Alamo, your unorthodox statistician, going left so much that you thought I was southpaw. I go left so much that I make Conor McGregor envious. I do believe in Joe Hendry. I am 2-5. Tonight, we have a new champion in the NBA, but world champions of what? And then we got NBA draft talk. Of course, there was a trade yesterday. We're going to get to all of it. Just do us a favor. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things and get you a blueberry buzzsaw liquid death, because that's where it's at. Let's
or
get to it.
severed line liquid death.
So, Mr. Logical,
Listening.
why all these players be trying to imitate Kobe, man?
Somebody, did he do it again? I saw the locker room was dead.
No, so Jason Tatum last year, with all his stuff and like texting Kobe and all this kind of stuff. And last night, SGA was like, Game 7? Let me go 8 for 27.
I saw that and I thought about another exciting finals where the star player with like 9 for 24 got a great block and ended up, leading the 3-1 championship. But it's funny to see, because watching the game, it didn't look like an 8 for 24 game. So I'm saying it felt, because like I said, when I saw the stat pop up, I was like,
yeah,
he looked way more effective than that. And that's because he did, like I said, the Kobe thing where, Kobe went 8 for 24 in that game 7 against Boston. 6 for 24, but he grabbed 15 rebounds.
Right.
So you saw his jersey, the ball impact plays. So it didn't look like the Harrison Barnes game where all you saw was like him getting the ball, him shooting it, and just missing wide open shots. So the Indiana, when Tyrese went down, I was like, oh, that's a bad turnover. I thought he slipped. And then they got the layup, and then he was like pounding on the floor, and it's the weirdest injury to see him, because like I never really paid attention to like it before, but now with these 4K cameras and then the zoom in and the slow motion, and you can see the injury happening to the point where the player knows immediately. A guy falls on the shoulder, it could be a bruise, it could be a labrum. You saw that.
Yeah.
The Kirk Cousins one from a couple years ago. Who else popped the Achilles that was like real prominent?
Durant.
The Deshaun Watson one.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the one I remember, because like I was watching, I was like, man, this is finally Cleveland finally got a good drive going, and you see the foot, the heel touch the ground, and it's like that's not how it's supposed to go. And when I saw the replay, and they know it immediately, and I'm out for a year. Soon as it happens, my next year of my basketball life in my 20s is gone. Like, you can't even rush it back. So I felt terrible for him, but they battled. It's just Obi Toppin said it, and it's I like when athletes are honest. I think people want to treat them like superheroes, like they're made out of stone. But he was like, yo, I'm not going to lie. Like, I was thinking about Tyrese pretty much the whole game. He's like, I'm like, I know that. He's like, I know that contributed to my bad game. He's like, I couldn't get out of my mind. I'm like, that's the real honest human thing. Like, some people, you just got to turn it on. You can't.
Well, I was wondering initially if it affected OKC as well, because you would think, just no real analysis, but you would think Halliburton
take over.
Let's run. You know what I mean? But Indiana went into halftime with the lead.
Yeah, Nimhard hit that three and they went in
48-47, yeah.
48-47. Indiana was playing great defense all series long. And once
Hey,
again, we talk about the role players. The role
what about my
players,
guy TJ McConnell, man?
yo, the
He was
dude,
trying to get that finals MVP, man.
if he would have put up if he would have put up like a really good Halliburton game, like 22, 10, and 8, and they pulled that game off, I think it would have been split 5-4 between him and Siakam. Because in order for him to get the assist, you'd have to get the ball to Siakam. I just think that
Right,
Siakam would have been the guy that was hitting those shots because the other guys were just off. So I think
right.
Siakam would have ended up with like, you know, high 20s, and it would have been the consistency throughout. But like I said, TJ McConnell was like their most important player in their wins because he just was taking these guys off the dribble. And then they started blitzing them. OKC was like, oh, we're going to blitz them. So he had to start inbounding the ball. They didn't have anybody else that could really, create. Matherin came on late, but he had the yips for like 2 games to the point
Right.
where it's like he was coming in and out. Carlisle was doing it. He was trying to do his thing. Neesmith kept getting fouled, so that was messing up his flow. I saw his face every time he was getting taken out of the game. Mark Dagenau, he played with fire. I know you were talking about that in the Minnesota series. He went small when they had Miles Turner on the floor. And it was a couple possessions where Miles Turner was getting the rebound, and it was like dude 6 inches shorter than him, like clawing at the ball like your big brother and a little brother situation. And I'm like, you don't need to do this. I know you want to give SGA his rest, but it's like Halliburton's not there. You can change up your game plan and go, let's go for the big lead. And I think when they got that big lead up to like 18, I was like, okay, but then they caught it back
I ain't
down.
gonna
But I
lie
think,
to you. When
yeah,
when OKC took that big lead, there was still a part of me that said, "This game ain't over yet." I done seen this movie too many times.
I told you I've turned off 2 or 3 games this playoff saying like it's over. And each time, or I turned on the Indiana game late and I was watching. No, every single game. The Milwaukee game, I turned that on right after Halliburton hit the layup.
Right.
Uh, the three against Cleveland, I think I just turned to the game from like I was watching something
No,
else.
I was.
Then I
I
turned
got
off the Nick
frustrated.
game and then game one.
I got frustrated. Usually, I get frustrated with Dagenau, but I got frustrated with Rick Carlisle because I was like, "Look, man, I know you're a great coach. I know what you did in 2011, but this is Game 7. There's no reason for Siakam to be on that bench right now." And and I know like at the end of the game, not to be the box score guy, but Siakam only took 13 shots. McConnell took 13 shots. Matherin took 14 shots. Something just don't add up. It doesn't compute for me. And I know OKC, obviously the defense shifted and had to focus on him
Yeah,
without Halliburton being there. But it was just one of those things where TJ McConnell was doing enough because he finished with 16. He was doing enough, that he deserved attention. You know what I mean? He was going at Chet, even though Chet, Game 7 NBA Finals record, 5 blocks. That tied
correct.
him for the series lead with SGA. Yes, SGA led the final in blocks. But Indiana, I think I don't want
It,
to
it
reduce
got
it to a
stagnant. It got
cliche.
stagnant in the
Yeah.
third
Like
because they were trying to figure out, all right, what's gonna work. And like you said, and like I said, Obi Toppin's normally your athletic guy that comes in with energy. He wasn't there mentally. Um, Neesmith was in foul trouble. He was out of the flow. Nimhard was doing his thing, but when Halliburton went out, anybody with the ball was getting trapped. In the
right.
Indiana, they kept dribbling to the sideline a lot. In OKC, a couple of times, like Wallace was like literally grabbing
He was
McConnell's
literally holding
wrist.
his hand and
He was
McConnell's
hold,
looking at the ref.
yeah. So like that was happening, and like I said, if it's not a crime to unless you get caught. So I just feel like OKC had the advantage, and Halliburton was going to have a night. When he started off 3 for 4 from three,
Right.
he was gonna have one of those Nick nights, that 32, 15, and 12 kind of night. I think he felt the pressure, and I think OKC played like a team that was under pressure, because there's no way that lead should have got under 10. There was
Yeah.
no way they should have gone into halftime down one,
Yeah.
because I think TJ McConnell got the layup and the score was like 68-66. And then OKC got like a quick layup, got it to 70, and then they went on their run. McConnell was gassed after that. He needed a break because like
Right.
that wasn't what he was used to doing. And
But I
OKC
was nervous.
they should have won this game by, they should have won the game. It should have been clear 3-4 minutes into the fourth that the game was over, and it wasn't.
Well, I got nervous because early in the first half, I kept making the comment in the chat. I was like, yo, where's J Dub? Like, he's just not here right now, because I know he was talking about I think it was Saturday. He said something along the lines of like, this is just eerie, knowing that it's the last game of the season, and just like it was kind of like, what are you talking about? So then when he got out there,
A
it
lot of
was like,
people weren't locked in. You could tell they
yeah.
weren't locked in.
And I mean, we talked about SGA going 8 for 27. J Dub went 7 for 20. So, like there's no planet that J Dub, not that he's better than SGA, but the way that he plays basketball, there's no reason he should be 7 for 20, because he can get to the basket at will, and he's shown that he can. Now, Indiana
They
on the
went,
other,
but they went like Oklahoma City went small a few times, and it was just J Dub out there, and he was kind of being funneled to Miles Turner. He was being funneled to Siakam. It just was like a weird. They had a weird lineup out there a couple of times. It's like they had lineups out there that I hadn't seen through the other 6 games.
yeah, they had
For
Kenrich Williams out there,
for extended period of
yeah,
time. It's
Wiggins
like,
was out there for a lot
put
longer.
your foot on their throat. I get that it's sad. It's very unfortunate that Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles, but from that moment on, I'm blitzing anybody with the ball, and we are running. I'm
Yeah.
like, we're at home. I
And
don't
then
want like 48, 47. When they walked back into the locker room, they said Tyrese Halliburton probably gave like an inspired speech, but it's like they really felt like we could win this game at 48, 47. But like I said, they had that period in the third where they got
that
stagnant.
monster said no, and
They were
and
fortunate, yeah.
they needed what they needed was some Miles Turner. He was the 7th leading scorer for the Pacers in this series. He shot 38% from the floor, 22 from 3. He just played his way to Detroit.
5 for 20. Like he was like 5 for 27.
Just played his. He's a Piston next year.
He had so many wide open looks too. So many. I'm like, is this gonna fall? Like I said, Mathurin was in and out because of the yips, but then he came on late. It was a bad a bad way for a team that played as hard as they did to have to end their season. Because like win or lose, you're gonna win or lose. But it's like you want to go down with all your guns, and it's just like they went down with one hand tied behind their back. So it was unfortunate. But it still was a great game. That's the crazy part. Yeah.
But now I know I've been bringing this guy up for the last couple of episodes, and I'm gonna bring him up one more time. Now we got Nikola Topic coming off of his ACL. So now OKC potentially has a real point guard now that should free SGA from having to do that. Good evening, ma'am. For having to do that. And at this point, he might even be trade bait, because when I was looking at something this morning, right, and they are picking, hold on, let me pull it up real quick, make sure I got it. They're picking 15th in the draft on Wednesday. OKC is, saying next season, they get Utah's if it's anywhere between 9 and 30. They get Phillies if it's anywhere between, I think it was 5 and 10 or something like that. So like this ain't stopping. You know what I mean? So OKC is here to stay. As far as Indiana though, Tyrese Halliburton, you mentioned it, he's going to be out all next year. So if you're Indiana, what do you do?
You recognize you're in a forced rebuild that was sprung upon you in the end of June of 2025. That wasn't your plan 2 days ago, that got to be your play in the day. So, like you said, Miles Turner played his way to Detroit. You can't give him a big contract because
Besides the
it's
fact
not.
that you've been trying to trade him for 6 years.
You've been trying to trade him for a long time. If you give him a big contract, Halliburton's out for a long time. You're not. I don't know how many tradable assets you have. So anybody that could walk or sign and trade or something like that, I would get younger.
Well, I think they got one tradable player that they don't want to trade.
Matherin?
Yep. Because I don't imagine you want to give up Siakam at this point. You know, because
it might be,
he would
that
get
might
you the
have
most.
to be the move. Yeah, that might have to be the move. You might have to just reset with younger pieces.
They just signed him this year.
Let it build, and then bring Tyrese Halliburton back and see if you can run it.
Yeah, he signed last year. He signed a 4-year, 189.5.
So yeah, he's probably going to stay. I think Matherin to be able to play his way in the Halliburton's absence, not play like Halliburton, but you'll get more of downhill, aggressive,
yeah,
backpack kind of guy out of Matherin. You bring in another point guard.
Because I mean, you would have to. I mean, Hey, you could go get his brother. Go get Nembhard's brother.
I mean, listen, if you like a family environment, if it works, it works. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think they'll be fine. Like I said, we were talking in a pre-meeting about there's 3 teams in the East that were really good this year and have been good for the past few years that are going to struggle. Indiana, Milwaukee, Boston, simply because their top star is out at a minimum. Best case scenario, you get him back in the All-Star break. That's for a couple of guys. So like Tatum's been injured since May. I mean, you might as well book it for October 2026, and don't even like put it in your head that it can happen earlier.
If you're Giannis, though, like, do you look at your front office and go, "All right, I haven't asked for a trade. You see what's going on around this landscape right now. Make something happen."
Yeah, but what does Giannis? Okay, so Giannis when they won the championship, because this is what Indiana's gonna have to look at. It's like, they lost Drew Holiday. I think Chris Middleton was playing a lot better, and then they kept him for a couple extra years, and they finally made that move. You would have to get that kind of haul to work with Giannis, because you're gonna need a point guard. You're going to need some shooters, and you're going to need stretch bigs, because Giannis
still paying Dame anyway.
Yeah, because Giannis is, he's up and down the court, and he likes to get to the rim. So you can't have, like, not saying that Gobert would be the play, like Gobert and Towns, how they were just like in the paint. You can't have guys who play like that with Giannis, because Giannis like, listen, I got to get through here. So I need you to be able to, like that might be a Miles Turner destination, but they don't have the money because they're still paying Dame. But you're going to need someone that can stretch the floor. If I'm Giannis, I'm still like, yo, I'm out, because those are my plans. I can't base my, how I feel about this team on what unfortunately happened to another team.
Well, I just figure, like, when you look at it, like, realistically, you got basically at this stage with all the injuries, you have New York and Cleveland. That's what you got. I like the Desmond Bane move. You're not as high on it. You got Detroit, who's up and coming, but still young. Still hasn't won a series.
I like Detroit because they made the playoffs and their team's still intact.
Right.
The thing with Orlando, I just don't know if
Jaden Ivey back.
I don't know how Orlando's going to work, because you talked about their lack of 3-point shooting. I don't know that unless he's going to get like this Klay Thompson level green light from 3 and shoot 44, 45%.
He's a 41% career shooter. Why not? You know what
That's
I
what I'm
mean?
saying. But like, unless
And
he's
Suggs was
strictly
at
going to
40.
be the guy, he's going to be the guy that gets our 3-point numbers up.
Right. And so, I mean, Suggs was at 42. So at the very least, you got 40% 3-point shooters on your roster now. You know, you got Anthony Black, who's a 6-7 point guard. He's not a shooter by any means, but he could be that facilitator in that that
But then you got
Lonzo
2
Ball
up and
kind of
coming
form.
young superstars.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, I mean, but they're still, even if best case
Yeah,
scenario, they're
they're
still 2
still a
years
work in
away.
progress. Yeah, they're a
Yeah.
work in progress.
And then after that, who? Like, you know, it
Healthy
ain't
Philly, but
Chicago, it
you're
ain't
talking about their
Atlanta.
bench.
Yeah, healthy Philly is like
Starting
saying
lineup
a
is
clean homeless
legit.
person. You know what I'm saying? That's just not a thing. You
Saying
know,
charity come through.
yeah, and then you got, you know, Atlanta, Miami still trying
Atlanta's
to.
That's the thing with Atlanta. Atlanta might go 50-32 next year for no reason. Just
No,
because.
no, they ain't.
Just because. Like their seasons make zero sense to me. They were in Eastern Conference Finals and they knocked off Philly a few years ago. It caused Philly
Hey,
to
that wasn't
completely
a
blow
few
up their
years
entire
ago.
team.
That's
It was
like 5 years ago now.
well, I mean, it was post-COVID.
That was the year. No, that was, well, I mean, that was the year that Milwaukee won.
That's what I'm saying. But it's like that year happened, and then the next year, Atlanta looked nothing like the team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals. But we think about, back in the day when they went 60-22. It was like it's just something about that team where things just happen. Like I said, it's gonna be a lot of moving pieces through this offseason. I know we're gonna get into the draft, but I don't think like I said, I'm not a big fan of like a lot of trades unless you're an established team. I think Boston can make a trade and they could put a person in a position like, listen, this is what we need from you. We need you to get about 16 points, but we need you to shoot about 6 or 7 threes to get to your 16 points. We need you in that range, 6 to 8 threes, 13 to 15 points. You'll get about 26 minutes. Like they can tell a guy they trade for that. Not a lot of teams can do that. And I don't know if Indiana could do that considering like their star is out and they're going to be searching for someone who wants to be the guy. Like I said, I don't know if you pay Miles Turner unless you really feel like, let's keep this NBA Finals nucleus together because you saw what happened with Dallas.
I just don't see the point without Halliburton because now you're just tying up money, you know what I mean, for no reason at all. Because I imagine he's going to command, close to 40, or whatever. So, and you're already paying Siakam the 189 and a half. So, like, you're already tying up your roster before Halliburton even gets back. So, and that's to assume that Halliburton comes back and picks up where he left off as well. You know what I mean? But he might need some time.
You're looking at 45. So Siakam and Halliburton have the same deal. They have 45 and a half coming to them next year. So that's 91 million. Then Nembhard's getting 18, McConnell 10, Neesmith 11, Toppin 14. Miles Turner was getting 19 this year.
That's what I'm saying. He's going to want like 35, like double that, but
yeah,
he ain't earned it. So, you know what I mean? I don't think you can give it to him. Like I said, and plus, it hamstrings your flexibility for when Halliburton does come back.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he's only 29, so I think it's probably a viable sign and trade. Maybe
that's what I'm saying. He gets you
a couple
value.
of pieces, like you said, out of Detroit. Maybe you get a couple of those pieces. I don't know. Memphis might be in the market to make a deal because they're probably purging some stuff. So it's gonna be tough. But they sadly, the losing NBA Finals team, they do like drastic stuff the following year that I normally don't agree with. The problem with Indiana is like for you to lose your star in Game 7, it just speeds up whatever plan you had or just completely scraps that plan going forward.
I don't know. I think if I were them, outside of Miles Turner, like you obviously would have to replace him if he leaves, but I think I just run it back as is and let these guys develop. You know what I mean? So that way, when Halliburton does come back,
your fans are going to be like that. Your fans aren't going to flake because
I know
Indiana basketball. Yeah, so like you're still going to be able to put on a good quality.
Yeah. But in that scenario, Nembhard's a little bit better because now he's probably taking a little bit more of the playmaking responsibilities that he doesn't do right now. Matherin gets, you talked about it. He gets aggressive and gets
Yeah.
you see what he can really develop into. You got,
44 and 38, 45 and 37.
yeah.
You're
I mean,
about six,
Siakam,
6 or 7 in
averages
the
26
West
or
and
so.
East.
You
Yeah,
know what
so
I'm
you're
saying?
about
So,
6 or 7 in the East. And honestly, if you think about it, Philly, like I said, healthy Philly,
and a play-in can still get play-in still in the lottery too.
Miami's a kind of disarray. So you got the Knicks. You said Knicks, Cleveland, Boston's
That's
still gonna
it.
be pretty good, and Indiana still might
And Detroit.
might still,
And Detroit.
Detroit might be 4. Indiana, you still might be able to be a good 5 seed.
Right.
You
Yeah, but
know,
I don't think you want that. That's the problem. So,
I
like I
think
said,
you want to. I think you want to just. I think you want to play good basketball. That way, you keep the
I
coaching
want to
staff
play
in place.
good basketball to end up as the 7 or 8 so I can get up in the, because if I don't make the playoffs,
Essentially, a lottery.
yeah, because I mean, I can still sell my fans like, hey, we still made the play in, but we didn't make the playoffs. Oh, what is that? We got the number 4 pick.
I
Like,
still like playing to win and seeing where the chips fall because unfortunately injuries do happen. So you get in you're a 6-3 matchup and the Knicks are 3 and you got Jalen Brunson rolls an ankle and he misses 2 games. He has a propensity to do that. So now you back in this series first round and you knock off the Knicks again. So like you could get that momentum. I just feel like winning is a better option when you have a winning culture.
no, I
I
agree
think
with that.
Yeah, I just think some teams just can't
Well,
seem
well,
to
well,
get
Monty
right.
Jones said something about that. It was something I'm kind of misquoting him, and I guess this is me paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
he said something along the lines of that's the difference between OKC and what Philly was doing with the trust the process. With trust the process, you were just building losers. You were telling people it's okay to lose because there's a bigger goal. OKC was trying to win. They
Yeah.
just had young players.
They just played the 22-year-old 35 minutes. Like, yo,
Right.
just go
Yeah.
shoot that
So
shot.
I'm trying to
Work on
win.
that turnaround. Okay, it didn't fall today. Cool. We own the gym. Come
Right.
back here and practice that turnaround. So when we play our 41 home games here, you know that this many feet from the hoop is your spot. But yeah, Philly would just flat out just like they had the rookie of the year. They traded him because he was upset about losing. Like, so yeah, that was a different problem. Like I
Right.
said, some teams are gonna have the problem where tanking is it's gonna look like tanking, and it's because you don't have any other options. Like we talked about Brooklyn. Like Brooklyn just
The
doesn't
Wizards,
have
the Jazz.
they just don't have the pieces to look
Right.
successful. So
Right.
the lineup you put out there is when people think, "Oh, you're tanking." Like, nah, I'm trying to develop. You just got to make sure the ownership is
Yeah,
on
that's
board.
the fine line, right? Like players have to play to develop. Like you can't develop by sitting on the bench.
Yeah,
So
you can't develop in the G League because Reed Shepard went down to the G League and was dropping 40, 45 points, 46 points back-to-back games. And then he comes and
yeah,
he doesn't get on the court. So it's like, what's the point of sending him to the G
thanks
League
for
and
the
then bringing me back?
segue.
Yeah.
Because he's probably getting on the court now. So like if you're Houston, you have to be really happy with what you gave up to give Kevin Durant. You kept Jabari Smith. You kept Cam Whitmore. You kept Reed Shepard. You gave up Dylan Brooks, but that's fine because you got Tari Eason to fill that slot. You gave up Jalen Green. That's fine. Everybody turned on him anyway. So,
It's still odd to me. Still very odd.
well,
Yeah, but
it's
we'll get
it's
to
the
it.
world that we live in today. Like everything is an overreaction. Like for example, right? If this was Game 6 of the finals, right? SGA comes out, scores 13 points. Oh, he's an overrated bum. He choked. Oh, I knew he wasn't that good. He shouldn't have been MVP. And then he
People
comes
are
out
saying
Game
the
7.
dumbest stuff.
And then he
He's the
comes out
worst
Game
MVP
7.
of my lifetime. What
Right.
the hell are you talking
And
about?
then he comes out Game 7. He puts up 30. You're gonna go, oh, he's a big game player. And it could be the same person making both of those comments. So with Jalen
Absolutely.
Green, where he went wrong is he had a 38-point game in the first round against Golden State, and for the rest of the series, he only averaged 9 points. The other part of that, Mr. Logical, is that Golden State in that series held Houston under 100 3 times. And so people are saying, like one guy in the hot box, shout out to Locke. He was telling me,
Yeah.
Jalen Green ain't improved on nothing. Jalen Green is still the same guy that he was when he got drafted, and he's inefficient and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. Cool. He's 23 years old, and you holler at me when they get an offensive coach because I love Ime, but Ime is one of those dudes that I don't want to make the equivalent, but he's that Mike Tomlin, the motivator. Like, I'm gonna get on you and I'm gonna make you perform because either you're scared of me or I'm just gonna motivate you to the point that you're gonna play outside of yourself.
Yeah,
But
he
what
seemed
that,
like he liked to fight.
right? But what that doesn't lend to is, hey, young blood, when the defense does this, I need you to do this, or hey, we're going to run this play, and that doesn't come with that. So a young guy like Jalen Green trying to figure it out, all he knows is I got to shoot the ball because everybody else on this roster just about cannot.
Yeah,
So
not a lot of those guys could create shots for themselves. Like even Fred VanVleet, NBA champ. He
yeah,
wasn't creating shots for himself. I think a lot of guys are point guard by like position
or
only,
height,
but not really.
like you're just
by
short.
height. I'm like, okay, so you're 6 foot even, you're a point guard. I think, like I said, in order of a good business deal, both people have to walk away like they lost something. I like it for Phoenix with the caveat that they have to now make this move has to fit like your next moves. So you went young with Jalen Green, 10th overall pick. So that's obviously going to be a young player. I mean, at the oldest, you'll probably draft as a 22-year-old.
I'm thinking they should draft Malawatch, but I don't know if he's going to be there that late. But go ahead.
So then you have Dylan Brooks. For what he gives you, intensity is one thing. Now you have to corral it. So you go intensity on defensive intensity, and then you're going to go young, run and gun offense. That's good to go. The problem is you got Book and Brad Bill still there. They have a bunch of guys who are shooting guard, small forward height, who play small forward. Some guys play the 4, like Dylan Brooks, because he's so heavy. No point guard. Is like, okay, fill out your roster. Don't think championship. Just figure out how do we build around this young player we have with Book being like that bridge, and what do we do about Bradley Beal? Because you can't pay him. You can't pay a guy $53 million to give you 16, 17 points.
All they have on their roster right now is shooting guards. Beal, Booker, Grayson Allen, and one more. I know they got Ryan Dunn in the draft last year at small forward, but I think he even plays a little shooting guard. So
yeah, they got a bunch of guys 6'5" to 6'8".
Yeah. So now with the number 10 draft pick, you got options. If Malawatch isn't there, like I said, to fill out your big man, because they ain't really had a big man since DeAndre Ayton. They had Nurkic last year, but they traded him. Maybe you get Derek Queen out of Maryland, or maybe you move up, depending on what happens with Ace Bailey. We'll get into that a little bit later, but depending on what happens with him, maybe he's there available for you. You know what I'm saying? But at that point, you're just loading up on scores, and you run into a younger version of what you had this year. So you don't want to do that.
Yeah, we're gonna have the draft talk real quick, but this mock has him getting Carter Bryant. I'm like, let me check it out. He's also 6'7".
Yeah, he's a bootleg Andre Iguodala. But we'll get to that. So like now, so one or two things if you're Portland. I mean, I'm sorry, Phoenix. You need either a true point guard, but that might require Book to play the 3, which he ain't big enough to do, but he's bigger than Jalen Green. So maybe you could look at a Jeremiah Fears right there. Maybe you could trade it and get another player. You don't even need to draft somebody, because Ishbia, I don't think, is in the business of let's build this. I think Ishbia is in the business of we want to win right now by any means necessary.
Ishbia is in the business of I started another business that went public and I made billions, and this is what I do. I turn ideas into billions of dollars. I'm like, yeah, this is the NBA. You have no idea what you're doing. It's evident. He hasn't made a good move yet.
No, and I mean, and that's why, like I said, when I pull it back and look at what they got in the trade, I'm like, I don't know how you didn't get Jabari Smith. At the very least, he's a young poor man's KD. You know what I
Let's
mean?
see.
At the
Let's see
very
what the
least.
money. Let's check the. I'm gonna check the money.
You know
Keep
what I'm
on.
saying? But as far as Houston goes, a lot of people are taking the approach that, hey, Houston like somebody told me Houston just became the favorite. And I'm
Wow.
like, no, they might be your favorite team. That might
It's gonna
be,
be a great watch.
you know what I'm saying? Like, if I think that the odds makers are going to overinflate Houston and give them the third or fourth highest odds to win the title. That's what I think people are going to do. Because theoretically speaking, right? You thought you were a piece like Kevin Durant away, because Jalen Green was your scorer. Van Vliet could get his own shot, but not necessarily a traditional point guard,
Yeah.
and the rest of these guys are waiting for the pass. So you think Kevin Durant is going to come in there. He averaged 26 this year, high field goal percentage as he usually does. But the problem with that is since he left Brooklyn, or I'm sorry, not since he played for Brooklyn. So he missed the year after the Achilles,
Achilles.
and then he started with Brooklyn. So from that point, he's played 60 games twice in the last 7 years. You know what I mean? Twice. You know what I'm saying? And then on top of that, he's only played, out of that 7 years, he played 4 of those years that were under 40 games. So I'm supposed to expect that he's going to suddenly get healthier as he's turning 37. Like he's been
Yeah.
injured his whole career.
Houston. Evan Turner says something last all season talking about Paul George because I guess he has some kind of beef with Paul George. But he was like, it didn't make any sense for Paul George to go to Philly. It was like he just felt like he heard it on TV and just went and did it. This Houston trade, like I said, I like Jalen Green because I think basketball is a young man's game. The way they play it now, the movement, the player movement, we talk about the regular season lack of physicality. You can't just hack guys and push guys around. So I think you can get away with having a more slender, fast, backcourt.
And it was his first time in the playoffs.
So, but with the deal, you talking about why they didn't get Jabari Smith. I think if I'm Phoenix, I probably would have asked for, because this the money works out. Jalen Green, Reed Shepard, Jabari Smith. I don't know if Houston makes that deal.
They don't. Because remember, Kevin Durant had all the leverage. So Kevin Durant had already made it known Houston, San Antonio, and Miami. I don't know why everybody wants to go to Miami, but then nobody ends up in Miami. But he
I think they look at it like a social thing. Like I would go play in Miami because you can get free agents there. Like just a lot of guys spend, a lot of football players, basketball players, even people who aren't from Miami spend their off seasons somewhere in South Florida. So it's probably just a great place for athletes to be. They do a lot of pro runs and stuff like that. So it's probably just a great place.
Remember, Dame wanted to go there. That was his only team that he wanted to go to. KD had him on the list. But
KD had him on the list before he went to Golden State. So yeah,
he did. And that's the thing, is that this ain't 2017 anymore. Yes, Kevin Durant is still averaging 26. Yes, he's still shooting a high field goal percentage. Yes, he's still one of the unicorns that we've seen in history. But he's not the same player. And you know what I mean? So for Houston, for this to work, he has to be that level of usage KD that I don't think he can be at this stage in his career.
I think this is a good entertainment move.
I mean, they win a series this time, probably. They win a series.
That depends on if he's going to be available in April.
Think about it. Let's look at the West real quick, right? Just real quick. So you got a full season with Steph and Jimmy Butler now, and you saw what they were doing, in their short period of time together before Steph got hurt. At one point, they were like 14-3. They were 20-5 together.
They're also 70 years old combined.
I know, but I'm just saying.
We just got to keep it a bean.
No, I know. But what
I
I'm
got
saying,
these retirement certificates up here because it's like, yeah, I'm an old man.
But what we have is proof of concept, though. You know what I'm saying? That don't mean they're going to make noise in the playoffs. I'm just saying, we saw them be successful. You
Yeah, it's
know,
gonna be good for TV.
okay. You got OKC still ain't, like I said, they ain't going nowhere. Nowhere. You know, the Lakers, yes, LeBron's another year older, but you figure Luka's better than anything on your roster. You know what I mean? That includes Kevin Durant. Minnesota just went to back-to-back Western Conference Finals. If they bring back Julius Randle, maybe they can make another run. You know what I mean? If not, then maybe they fall back a little bit. Memphis is in cluster right now. Dallas, if they could be healthy, they at least got the names on paper. AD, if he could stay healthy, Cooper Flag. You make a couple of moves to hold it down till Kyrie gets back. Dallas could be one of those teams that finishes as the 6th seed that you don't want to play in the first round. You look at Sacramento's falling apart. Portland's still young. So if you're Houston, I think
So many NBA teams are literally falling apart. Like,
yeah,
using the phrase "falling apart" when you talk about a professional team shouldn't be as
it
fluid
shouldn't
as
be
you're using
applicable
it.
to half the league.
Yeah, it applies. Sadly it applies, but in the same sense, I think because of that, I think people are gonna inflate their own expectations because of the circumstance of another team, not recognize like, yo, we got to make this work. I don't. I know Kevin Durant is a bucket and he's just super dynamic, but it's only so many minutes this guy's going to be able to chase.
Right.
When they play a game against Phoenix and say he has to guard Jalen Green, how long is he chasing Jalen Green up and down the court? You know what I mean? Like, how long is
Yeah.
he gonna, have to deal with Wemby if they, like it's a toll, and it's like,
Right. And that was the other team I was about to bring up. Don't forget, you get Wemby back, you get De'Aaron Fox for a whole season. You know what I mean? You already got the rookie of the year. You got the number 2 draft pick who might be the rookie of the year next year. So like the Spurs are going to be on that ass. The only thing that's stopping them is inexperience. So at best, I want to say Houston could finish 5th, maybe 4th, like if they get lucky.
yeah, best case scenario 5. No, best case scenario is 4. Most likely scenario is probably from around 6 or 7.
You
Because
know
I
what I
think
mean?
Denver
And I didn't even bring up them.
with an off season healthy,
But see,
like there's
Denver's got to make a move though. That's the problem. Like Denver, there has to be a move that we don't see
Denver
yet.
has to be willing to play 10 guys.
Denver has to be willing.
Michael Porter Jr. might get you 2 bodies
They
and a
need
draft pick.
Denver might have to put Jamal on the block.
Nah, I would. I think Michael Porter Jr. is more of a attractive trade piece because he's a stretch four.
And because of his height, yeah. But I
Because of
think
his height,
Jamal Murray. Well, they're both injury prone though, so
but I think Jamal Murray and Jokic work better together than than Jokic and Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah,
If you see that their own team,
Jamal Murray and Jokic work out just fine until Jokic asks for a trade.
yeah, Jokic's not gonna do that. Jokic is gonna play it out and then go back to Serbia and ride his horses.
Ride them horses.
Jokic is not going to another city, setting up shop, learning the vibes of that city. Just he's like, once it's done in Denver, he's got 2, 3 MVPs, 3. At least 2 regular season MVPs, or 3,
and
3 regular season MVP, Finals MVP, championship, and then people felt like he was essentially
should have been MVP this year. Probably
should have been MVP 2 other times. So I think he could look back on his career like, I had a dope time. Now let me look at his age. What is he about? Let me pull it up right now real quick.
I would imagine he's close to 31.
So he's 30, probably going on 31. He plays 1, maybe 2 more years in Denver and says, all right, I'm going back to Serbia. I'm riding my horses till from 33 until I die.
Yeah, that's the team that. Wait for it. That's the team that needs to try to move up in the draft. You know what I mean? Because I think that they need some kind of infusion, because like I said, if they trade, or like you said, if they trade Michael Porter Jr., they should be able to get something valuable for him. I don't know what that
30
is, but something
he's at
valuable.
38 million, so I think that's a reasonable number that another team will take on.
You know what I'm saying? It's and maybe, there's a team like Memphis that could use his stretch shooting. You know,
They just moved Bane, so yeah.
yeah, Ja Morant penetrate, kick it out to the 6'10" dude. Jaren Jackson likes to shoot too. So, paint wide open for Ja at that point. So, but we'll get back to that. So anyway, on Wednesday, we got the first round of the NBA draft, of course, to be followed by the second round on Thursday. So first question is, how do you feel about the NBA draft being 2 days?
Waste of time.
I
As soon as I
agree.
heard it, it's a waste of time. Because first of all, your second round picks don't even get contracts for the most part. Bronny James got like 9 million and the world imploded. Like that's probably at the high end of what most of these guys get. So
Right.
it's going to be a bunch of guys you're probably going to draft from Latvia, Lithuania, Turkmenistan. They're going to just sitting on ice in some Euro league or some Russian league or some Chinese league. So literally, there's going to be zero reason to watch the second day of the NBA draft. I'm not banning it. It's just facts.
Well,
It's like there's
I'm
no
gonna be
intrigue
watching
in
it
the
because
second
I like
round.
a lot of these guys. You know what I mean? But yeah, like looking at this, it's still surreal to me that Dallas and San Antonio are 1-2. That's still surreal to me after all this time. Like I just can't believe it. So I guess you could say that the draft starts at 3, but the question that I have to start off is San Antonio really going to take Dylan Harper?
Uh, check this article that I sent you. Basically said that San Antonio's asking for so
What up,
much
Mike?
for teams to trade for that number 2 spot that they're probably just going to take the best player available. I personally wouldn't take a guy that's literally like if I already have a guy like that on my team, a 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guy, I would try to make my team a little bit more dynamic. And if you can do that, I don't just getting another guard just doesn't do it for me. Especially like let's not front.
I was the Spurs.
Didn't
I
make
trade down.
Rutgers didn't make the tournament, and they have 2 guys that's supposed to be 2 top 3 picks in the draft. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like I don't know how much really translates to the NBA if the 2 of you couldn't be in this. Like you need 21 wins to make the NCAA
That was
tournament
a
when you're.
bad team, man.
But if you have 2 guys that are supposed to be lottery picks, if Cooper Flag and Ace Bailey were on the same team, don't you think they'd be at least make the tournament? Because you have
Yes.
like I have 2 top 3 picks. You should be able to make the tournament. I felt the same way about Ben Simmons when LSU didn't make the tournament. It's like you're supposed to be number 1 overall pick, and you
That
couldn't
team was
get
terrible, man. Like I'm
you.
telling you,
You got to get 40.
I
You're an
know, but you're
NBA
talking
player
about. But think
amongst
about this.
college kids.
But think
You're
about this.
in,
You're talking about a team that plays in the same conference with Michigan State and Tom Izzo, Matt Painter and Purdue, who had just played in the national title game the year before. Maryland was in that conference.
I'm
Like
talking about those 8 to 12 cupcake games you play. You should go 12-0 in those. And in conference, if you play about 18 conference games at that level,
that team is
go
terrible, man. I'm
go
trying to
10
tell
and
you.
9. Listen, how many players from Davidson made an NBA roster?
Well, Davidson also played in the Southern Conference against Wofford and UNC
And
Greensboro.
they still win the tournament
Just like
2
I told
years
you
in a
about
row. And
OKC, like people were like, "Oh, SGA did what Kevin Durant and them couldn't do," and I'm like, "Yeah, SGA didn't have to play against Miami LeBron either."
yeah.
Like, so what I'm saying? That matters. Like,
And that was post Dallas loss sports psychologist
what I'm saying?
MVP LeBron.
Illinois
Yeah.
was good. Illinois got 2 probably top 15 players in this draft. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, man. But anyway, I
I
get
mean,
your
I get
point,
it.
Joe.
Yeah. So I just feel like the last few years we've had the consensus number 1 and then a couple of guys after that, and it just feels like after that, it's such a drop off.
Right.
I like the fact that you have Dallas, San Antonio, and Philly because those are, I think, good organizations. I
Big
think Philly's a
market.
good
Well,
organization.
not San Antonio, but
San Antonio's a good organization. Dallas a good organization because now these top three picks should be on TV. These guys should get an opportunity. They shouldn't get treated. They shouldn't get the Reed Shepard treatment where you're going down to the G League or you're coming off the bench and you're the number one pick. It's like a lot of that stuff was like kind of bothersome. So like I said, I think San Antonio will go with the best player available. Like I said, the West is going to be down. There's a lot of teams that just seem to be in flux. San Antonio's kind of working these pieces. So I think they go with the best player available. I wouldn't even entertain any trades unless it's a serious, just like overwhelming trade where you get Giannis and like a couple of Milwaukee first round picks. Like you gotta really wow me. Other than that, I want to take the best player available at 2, which is the pick of the litter. Everyone except for Cooper Flag, and see what you can do in the West next year.
I think that if I'm the Spurs, if it were me and if it was my decision, I think I trade down. Um, Obviously, I would have to see what kind of player I could get in that, but if it's just trade down, I think I would trade down and try to get Con Knipple. Get me a shooter because Fox can't shoot, Castle can't shoot. Harrison Barnes is a better shooter than he was when the Warriors needed him to shoot, but still not necessarily a good shooter. Keldon Johnson's an okay shooter. Sohan can't shoot. Vassell shoots too damn much and doesn't shoot enough to take the shots or shoot good enough to get the shots that he takes. So, Wemby has to take 6 or 7 threes because the rest of them shoot so bad. So if I was the Spurs, I would look at Con Knipple. The only thing that I don't like about Con Knipple is he's got the Amani Bates syndrome where his wingspan is the same as his height. I don't really like that because I don't know how you're going to get your shot off a lot. He's not as athletic, I mean, not to do the white guy thing, but he's not as athletic. So,
Real gym rat, real locker room guy.
Yeah, so I wonder how that works. So I don't
How
necessarily.
far down do you want them to go?
I think you could still. I think you could still get Knipple at about 6 or 7. I think you could still get him at 6 or 7 because the way that it plays out in my mind, and this is dependent on Philly taking Ace Bailey still. So so Cooper Flag, if they Harper's probably number 2, Bailey, I think VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, and then you get into, is it Knipple or Jeremiah Fears? I think so around 5 or 6, right after Utah or at Utah is the way I think you could still trade down. Now, let's explore this a little bit. So, if I'm Washington, not because I'm a Wizards fan, but if I'm Washington, I have a lot of guys on my team that are young, they're athletic, they can be good players. I don't know if I have the guy. You know what I mean? Like I got a lot of guys, but I don't know if I have the guy. So if I'm Washington, I'll try to trade up to get Dylan Harper and I move off of Jordan Poole. Just to keep the rebuild thing going. If
You're
I'm
trying to get
Utah,
from 6 to 2?
yeah, potentially. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know what they would have
NBA
player.
rarely does that though.
I know.
It's a strange thing.
We're just having
The
a conversation.
NFL does it. Yeah, the NFL does that a lot, but the NBA for some reason doesn't. They don't make those kind of moves.
But I don't know player wise who Washington could give to San Antonio to make that worthwhile. Now, if you look at Utah, on the other hand, Utah could give up Markkanen. You know what I mean? So, like,
He's been
Markkanen's
on the
not
trade block for
KD.
years.
Yeah, he's not KD, but at the same time, he's younger. Saying he's efficient, he can shoot. So from that standpoint, maybe that's something I could look into. If I'm Charlotte, I don't know that Charlotte needs to trade up to get somewhere because to Mike's point, VJ Edgecombe might be there for Charlotte as long as Philly takes Ace Bailey. I don't think that Ace Bailey would fit with Charlotte, but I think that Edgecombe would fit very well. Pause. You know what I'm saying? If I'm New Orleans, I'm trying to move up to get anybody. Don't even care what position it is. It could be a point guard. It could be I don't care. New Orleans needs a little bit of everything. You know what I'm saying? Now, the question is, you know what I'm saying, are they willing to come off of Zion? Not that the Spurs would want him, but, but just for conversation, like, New Orleans probably needs to come off of Zion to really get a rebuild going. DeJounte Murray is coming back from injury. CJ McCollum's another year older. So New Orleans needs a little bit of everything. Now, Brooklyn is where it gets interesting because Brooklyn has 5 picks in this draft, all in the top 36. You know what I mean? So I could get, and the Spurs have number 18. So the Spurs got 2 picks, or not 18,
14.
14.
14,
Yeah. So they have 2 picks as well. So that's why I feel like they could trade out of that. But if I'm Brooklyn and I could get one of the Rutgers boys, you know what I'm saying, sign me up. You know what I mean? I got all this cap space. I still got to try to re-sign Cam Thomas, maybe. But if not, then come take over this team.
So what's Ace Bailey's workout situation? Like, what is he just holding out? Was he
hasn't
promised
worked
another
out for
team?
anyone. Like, he hasn't done a private workout. And that's where, you start to wonder, because like with a guy like Kobe, right? He did the whole thing like, yo, I'm not gonna play for Charlotte. But Kobe was still working out. He was still showing up, putting in the work, putting himself on display. Ace Bailey, it's a questionable move because remember when the season first ended and the combine was happening, right? We thought he was 6'10". And he got to the combine, was
they
like,
got him
oh, he's
6'7.5" without his shoes. Yeah.
Right. So I agree, Mike. I think Ace Bailey's the best player in the draft too. But the problem is that, like, that's a discrepancy, right? Because when you're 6'10", people are looking at you through a Michael Porter type lens. You know what I mean? Like, this is the big guy that stretched the floor. He's athletic as hell, XYZ. But then, you're 6'7.5". You're only an inch taller than, well, Dylan Harper, they said, was 6'6". They got him at 6'4.5". So, so it's like Rutgers is just a bunch of liars, I guess. But
everybody
what I mean?
embellishes a little bit.
But if you're 6'7", that looks a whole lot of different, because can you be SGA? I don't think he's that type of player. I think he's more, not direct comparison, but I think play style, he's more of a Kobe type dude. You know what I mean? He just takes wild shots, hits very tough shots, and you got to try to reel that in. You know what I mean? But I think he's talented enough that he's going to be a star. You know what I mean? But he ain't off to the right start right now. You know what I mean? But who I have my eye on is Trey Johnson from Texas. You know what I'm saying? I'd like to see him put on a little bit of weight, but you could say that about anybody, when they're 18 or 19. You know what I mean? They asked him who he patterns his game after, who does he think he is, and his answer was very interesting to me. That's a good one. He could be T-Mac. He said that his game is Milwaukee Ray Allen. You know what I mean? Like, so young Ray Allen. You know what I mean? I think that he's a better shooter coming into the league than Ray Allen was, because Ray Allen developed that over time. So I think he's already there, but a lot of his work comes off the dribble. So I need to see more screens, more catch and shoot. Can you get around this pick and put up this three with a hand in your face, where you only see the basket in the defender's hand? Can you do that type of thing? So I think Trey Johnson is in the conversations to be one of the better players in this draft as well. So, but I see that as more of a Utah fit, because Utah is one of those teams that needs a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And these
maybe
teams
not a
align too, because I'm checking these players out. So I'm on the ESPN.com, the mock draft, and checking these players out as you're bringing them up. So I click on the name and it goes to their college page with their college stats. Every single one of their heights is 2 inches high. Like it had Con Knipple at 6'7". They
Oh,
got
see,
him
here go
6'4".
Mike trying to start stuff. You see, Mike trying to start stuff. I'm telling you, Mike, if the Mavs do not
Hold
take
on,
Cooper
they gonna draft
Flag,
who? They not. They drafting the
if
Cooper
if
Flag.
if they don't draft Cooper Flag, Nico better act like he's in Qatar and find a bunker. That's what's about to happen in Dallas if they don't draft Cooper Flag, and I
Yeah,
mean that. So then you get to Washington, and Washington is one of those things, one of those teams that they could go so many different ways that they could shake up the
I
draft.
don't think the Mavs will draft Cooper Flag. Sometimes, Mike, I think you just say stuff and hope that it happens, just so you can say, "See, I told you so." There's no reason for the Mavs not to take Cooper Flag. There's no reason for them to look for a flaw. Just take Cooper Flag and see if it works. Like there's literally no it's not even a reason to put yourself in a position to where you're going to potentially talk yourself out of taking Cooper Flag.
Now,
If
from
he's
what I heard
healthy,
too, like the workout that he did with them, like the workout solidified that he's the number one draft pick from the reports at least. But of course, drafts so they could be blowing smoke too. But
yeah,
but yeah, so like Washington is the type of team that they could take anything, like if Ace Bailey, because there's been talk that he might slip because teams are turned off, you know, like they're turned off by his attitude and what he's doing right now. So could he? People have been saying, could he be the Shador of this draft? You know what I'm saying? I think the NBA is a little different, and because like in the NFL, you could argue, hey, I think Shador is a really good quarterback, but how much better than this
uh,
linebacker is he? You know what I
yes.
mean? Whereas in the NBA, it's like if I don't get Ace Bailey.
If I don't get these 19 points and 8 rebounds, who am I going to get that's going to get me 20 points and 10
Right.
rebounds?
So I
Like,
don't think you could play those games in the NBA. Now, maybe you could trade, and somebody like Brooklyn moves up or something like that, but I don't know. But anyway, but like so Washington could go anywhere. They could go Trey Johnson if he's still on the board, and like I said, move Jordan Poole. They could go Ace Bailey if he's just happens to be there. They could go Knipple. I heard that they like him a lot. They could go Derek Queen, from Maryland, who I like a lot. I think he's a smaller Boogie Cousins. Saying could they go Malawatch, who I don't like as much. But if you put Malawatch next to Alexander Sarr, you got your defensive twin towers at the very least. They might not score a lot, but you're going to lock down the paint if nothing else. Washington also apparently likes Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma. So this is the question that I have about him. You ready for this one?
let's hear it.
He's a dog, but I don't know if he's Maltese or Rottweiler. You know what I'm saying? He
But that's
will
a hell of
play.
a question to have for a player that you, because a lot of these guys are undersized. Like I'm
Well, a
looking
lot of
at,
these guys I don't think deserve to be top 8 or 9 picks per se. It's just that they're young. You know what I mean? They got upside, and you feel like if you strike gold, you're gonna get lucky. So a guy like Jeremiah Fears is the type that at this stage, he's probably more of that Westbrook. He can't shoot, but he's just so damn athletic, that if he ever develops anything that looks like a jumper, saying you could have an all-star on your hand. You know what I'm saying? But at
well,
the same time,
that guy from Kansas was in like Josh Jackson or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
That same kind of like dynamic talent in college, but got to the NBA and did nothing.
yeah. And then oh, Mike is on one.
Mike
Yeah,
is on one. Mike, you know damn well they taking Cooper Flag. They sold the Lakers because it's $10 billion because they overpaid. They overpaid, so the teams that are expansion teams now their value is up. So that gets more people involved in wanting to pay in those teams. Dallas, yes, they have the casino money, but that doesn't mean you pass up on Cooper Flag because you want to go to Vegas. They're gonna move another team to Vegas when they make this expansion announcement. It won't be Dallas. Mark Cuban sold the team because it was money. It's money involved. And a lot of times, honestly, it's a no-win, no, it's a very thankless job. I mean, hell, we just had a whole segment talking about the finals. We talked very little about OKC winning it all. We talked about them throughout the year, but it's not a lot of
There's not a lot to
like
break down.
joy to bring
Yeah.
in to like a lot of owning these teams. It's a lot more stress than it is. The players are getting all the money. The ratings are, in the tank, and it seems to be a disconnect between the NBA league management, Adam Silver's office, and the owners and the players. So I think a lot of the owners like, yo, I'm out of this business, and they're getting out of this business for crazy. The Celtics owners, they sold their percentage after they won the championship. They got like 6.5 billion. It's like it's just a money. It's easy money grab. Once Steve Ballmer paid 2 billion when the Clippers are worth like 650 million, then that's how you knew it was all about just inflating the price of these franchises. They're taking Cooper Flag. There's no reason not to. There's no reason not to take them.
So that brings me to my first bust alert. Pause. You know what I'm saying? Brings me to my first bust alert. Asperis Yakionis from Illinois. Every time I watch people talk about him, they talk about, oh, he hits these deep threes off the dribble and he does this and he shot 31.8% from three. He ain't hitting shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, he is a playmaker. I'll give him that. But I don't know what he brings to the table outside of that. He's going to get abused on defense. And that's what I mean. A lot of these guys are not top 10 picks. You know what I mean? It's just, hey, he's tall. He's 6'6", and he can dribble a little bit. Like, we need that. So I could see a team like New Orleans reaching for him and, thinking that they got their future point guard, when they basically got a taller Ricky Rubio or something like that. So, so that's number one. Then the player that I can't figure out is Carter Bryant. You brought him up earlier. I can't figure him out. Like I don't want to call him Andre Iguodala just because he went to Arizona, but I see a lot of Andre Iguodala. He's a lot better shooter than Iguodala was coming out. But I don't know if he could do the other things that Iguodala did. But then again, Iguodala couldn't do those things until he was old and got to Golden State either. So, but like, I don't know, like, where he fits. Like,
But I think the league is in a bit of transition because we talked about this last week. I think the legends of the game and the way that we look at Iguodala, Paul George, Embiid, Giannis, LeBron, Luka. A lot of these guys coming in they're not very big, not very physical. A lot of 6'9", 208-pound guys. A lot of 6'6", 196 players coming in. So I think the league is going to transition to where these guys are going to be able to thrive. I thought Chet was going to get knocked around in the finals, especially after Game 3, because he's light. He's a tall guy, but he's light. But I think a lot more of those players are going to be run up and down the court. Like I said, we talked about the whole American development. I think American players tend to be a little bit bigger. Like, our bigs are bigger. Like, Derek Queen's a bigger player, So the young boy that was in NC State last year that set the tournament on fire.
Yeah,
he was playing Burns. He was playing like 310. Didn't get any looks at the NBA team until like, yo, we can't do anything with that. Zach Edey, 2-time player of the year. And it's like, you can't get 7'4" on the court because he's 7'4", 244, whatever his number is. Like, he's and he's built for his height. But now they want a lot of guys with, Iguodala's height, but they want light like Devin Booker. Like, you're gonna have to have some weights. But I think a lot of these guys, I think they'll be better off than we think, but it's gonna take until these old heads kind of get out of the way. But like I said,
see, if I'm a team like Toronto, I'm looking at Cedric Coward. That might be a little high, but I like him a lot. 6'7", 40% three-point shooter. And he's got that Dalton Connect story. He came from a Division III school, went to Washington State, And then he was going to transfer to Duke this year. Actually, he was going to be on Duke, and so that shows you how hard he works, and the amount of ethic that he puts into things. Which means that if it were me, RJ Barrett be going bye-bye. And I don't know if they want to move RJ Barrett because he is a local guy. He's the Canadian, the Maple Mamba, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But I'm trying to figure out what Toronto's trying to do, because they gave Emmanuel Quickly a bunch of money. They still got Scotty Barnes. They drafted Grady Dick last year. They went and got BI to put next to RJ Barrett. So that's the reason that I thought that they might trade RJ Barrett, because having BI and RJ Barrett on the floor together just sounds like a nightmare. Two dudes that want to shoot too much and don't really want to play defense. And then you still got Jakob Portal. So, so Toronto's just a weird team.
They're gonna grab some foreign guy that's gonna sit on ice for 2 years.
Well, I feel like they have talent, but it's just talent that's just mismatched. It just doesn't go together. So then you got Phoenix up here at number 10, right? We were talking about them. Do they stay at 10? Do they trade it away? Do they try to move up a little bit to get like a Malawatch or a Derek Queen, or probably a little early for Thomas Sorber. So I don't think they want to go there. But back in the day, you built your basketball team. You had a point guard, you had a center, and then you complemented them.
Correct.
Phoenix just has a bunch of guards right now, so they have to solidify the big man, I would think. You know what I mean? So, but we'll see. Portland, what do you do, right? Like Portland got Scoot Henderson at the point. You still got Anthony Simons, who they need to trade, deserves to be on a better team. You got Shaden Sharp, who I like a lot, even though he didn't play for Kentucky, but you got Tumani Kamara coming on as the small forward. You got Denny Avia, who the Wizards should have never let go. You got DeAndre Ayton and Donovan Clingan. So Portland seems like a team that they still got Jeremy Grant. So they seem like a team that has a built-up roster already. They just got to let the young guys get more reps, if you will, and figure out, am I trading Ayton? Can I get something for Jeremy Grant? Maybe. But I just don't know if I see a player in the draft that they have to have.
Yeah, so, a lot of the same thing you're saying with Toronto. They have a lot of pieces that don't really fit. Like the pieces they have don't
they're good players that don't
lead you to success. Like you're not going to say, oh, they got this guy, this guy, this guy. This should garner them this many wins. Like we talked about Detroit. Detroit has this many players. Guys come back from injury. Guys been playing for a while. It should get them this. Portland just feels like DeAndre Ayton and Kling is like, once again, like the NBA doesn't. Neither one of them are stretch, so you can't play them at the same time. No one's really driving into the paint, so they can't really help you on defense. And then when you have a young team, they're normally not really defensively sound. So for Portland, I would just their best case is probably just to go best player available or a player that can kind of create his own bucket.
Well, I was going to say, like, I was looking at, and this might be a little high. But I was thinking Colin Murray Boyles from South Carolina. You know what I'm saying? He averaged, 16, 17, 8 boards, so the thing is, he reminds me of somebody. And the person that he reminds me of is the guy that I said I promised that I wouldn't say anything negative about him, for a year since they beat the Lakers.
Julius?
Julius, that's exactly who he reminds me of. You know what I mean? So that could work to your point. If you get Jeremy Grant out the way, you get a bigger body that can kind of create a little bit. I've heard some people compare him to Draymond. He shoots about as well as Draymond, but that's about it. I think of him more in that Julius Randle mode. So you just got to decide, with all these young guys on my team already, do I want a dude that's gonna play that way? So, but I don't really see anybody that they need, because they don't need a center with Klingan and Ayton, unless they get rid of Ayton, But I think if you get rid of
Ayton, a point guard, if you have
Scoot,
you got Scoot,
and Anthony Simons,
Anthony Simons.
So yeah, you know what I mean. So another guy that I just can't figure out. And part of it is due to him being foreign, but Noah Singh. A lot of people like him. A lot of people have him projected to Atlanta. I just don't know enough about him. Like, I'm not impressed when I see him on film. Like, he doesn't really seem to stand out. But then you got Asa Newell, who a lot of people are trying to make an Ant comparison because he went to Georgia, but he's bigger than Ant.
Yeah.
I don't know if he shoots as well as Ant. But a lot of people have their eye on him. So as you go around this draft board, you come back to San Antonio again at 14, and then look at number 15. Look at number 15. You know what I mean? And they're in a position to take a player that teams want just because. But how about this, Mike? If you still here, here's one for you. What about Oklahoma City taking Jace Richardson? Son of Jason Richardson. You get your
Measures
6'2".
smaller than he
Yeah,
measures smaller than expected.
right. But I'm thinking about it
Pause.
from the standpoint, unless I just think that OKC needs to not have SGA as their de facto point guard. At some point, you just need him to focus on scoring and not, be a facilitator. So unless Cason Wallace is going to be that guy, because they took him at 10 or 11 a couple of years ago, so maybe that could be the move. They got Topic, like I brought up. So I don't know where OKC can go. Maybe they trade the pick.
I got a guy.
Who's that?
I watched him in a tournament. They got him here projected going 13 to the Hawks. Igor Dimin, the big guard from BYU. BYU players play sound basketball.
I know, but
And
to me,
he
that's Josh
actually is
Giddey.
listed at 6'9". The problem is he's 6'9", 199.
I think,
But
but
he's
I think that's
Russian, so you
Josh
could probably
Giddey.
put 12 more.
I think that's Josh Giddey 2.0.
Josh Giddey was a good player for OKC.
And what they do with him?
I
They
mean,
were like, you got to go.
him.
Yeah, they were
But-
like, you. And why did they say he got to go? Because he can't shoot.
This guy's 51% shooting percentage. He was on average like 10 points, but I just think he's a versatile guard and it fits what they do as far as like their wing players. Their wing players are like long defenders. You have Chet. Like I said, they figured out a way to play with the small guy. Like you said, when they picked up Hartenstein, you called it last July. Like, okay, they just won the NBA championship. I think that you have a guy played at BYU, a little older, sound, basketball system. I think it fits right in to what the type of basketball that they play there.
See, and I think Jace Richardson does too with his athleticism. And, but I also think that they could do something like John Berringer, I believe is how you say it. The center from France, because, looking at the front court there, you got Chet, you got Hartenstein, but then you got Kenrich Williams and the other J-Dub. You know what I mean? So maybe like you can get freshly young and trade one of them. Outside of that, maybe if you're OKC, you just look at another shooter, just somebody else to kind of knock down shots. So maybe you could look at somebody like Danny Wolf out of Michigan, even though I like him to go to Minnesota to replace Julius Randle, just that 6'11" guy that can step out. I just don't know how good Danny Wolf's going to be. So I think that he is, for me, as they say on TV, he's the highest variance player to me, because you could either get a steal that at 6'11" is going to put up 14 points and efficient three-pointers, or you're going to get a 6'11" guy that plays like he's 6'7". So,
but the thing is, you're going to end up with, there's going to be a lot of foreign players that playoff teams are going to draft and kind of keep on ice. I can see Minnesota getting one of these 6'10", 6'11" guys from Australia, France. Like I said, that's why like the 2-day event doesn't really, make a lot of sense to me, because we talked about it before. We had a segment with how many players how many players went back to school, stayed in school, or didn't apply to even go to the NBA draft. It's like they're doing the same thing they're doing with expansion and everything else. It's like your product isn't doing that well. Your
Right.
viewership is down, but yet you want to expand. It's like they're just ignoring all of the stuff and like, yeah, you're gonna watch whatever we put on
Because they
because
think
we're
that what was one of those things, right? Seattle, like I was saying, Seattle's the 12th market, in the country. Vegas is 40th, but it's still higher
it's
than
Vegas, yeah. But
yeah,
Vegas is gonna you're
yeah.
gonna get you're gonna if you play 3 home games a week in Las Vegas, you're gonna sell out 18,000 seats.
100%.
Just because it's just thousands of people fly in every day, all day long. There's just people flying in and out of Vegas. And anything, if you go there for something professional, it's built around the times where you can still enjoy yourself. So if you go in there for a teachers conference or a business conference or a business meeting or a leadership conference, you're out of there by 3, 4 o'clock, and you can hit the tables or gamble, what have you. Like I said, I like what teams are going to be able to do in the top 10. I like Phoenix being able to, also add another body with the Kevin Durant move. We talked about Bradley Bill, but the money he's getting paid is going to make him tough to move, and there's no trade clause also going to be tough to move him. We talked about the buyout for them; that's going to cost them a lot. So being able to bring in the body where you might have to treat Brad Bill like they treat his former teammate John Wall, and just say, hey, don't come to the arena, we'll cut your check. But just and you grab a guy and do your real rebuild.
Well, that no trade clause might be why they have to buy him out.
Yeah, I mean it's
Because I mean
smart
he's
for
only going
him.
to what probably knowing the way that these players work, he's probably only going to want to go to 3 places:
Yeah, he's gonna want to go to whoever's hot,
Miami, LA, and then a contender.
like if he had his pick, it'd probably be LA, Golden State, or Miami. Like if he could put his little list out to the team.
Yeah.
But I'm also,
So
like I said, I'm also very weary of the foreign players because we've watched Wemby and the people love Wemby. If Wemby was 6'11", he'd be almost ineffective. Like I
yeah.
think the fact that he's 7'5" and like that's the unnerving part for me is that we're getting a lot of these foreign players and they're getting a lot of these dunks. It's like, yeah, because you're not bumping into anybody that lifts weights. You're not bumping into anybody over 200 pounds. You're just literally going down the lane untouched, getting dunks. Like I saw the replay when Wemby shot the step back three, and then in slow motion and called they got the dunk, the putback. I'm like, yes, just because they like the teams that had like when on San Antonio in a way, like I talked about, like these cut through the paint, they don't give them the ball.
Right.
It's like it's just so a weird usage of foreign players. Like I said, most foreign players sit for a couple of years overseas before they even come over. So I'm just still waiting on those kind of players. But like I said, I think a lot of college players here are going back for the NIL money, which makes sense because the first round
Oh,
pick is going to get.
actually, I'm glad you said that. That was one of the questions I forgot to ask you. So with the expansion, real quick, we don't got to talk about it long. I'm just going to ask you
Yeah.
one question. With the expansion, do you think that affects some players still coming out just from the standpoint of more available teams?
Nah, I think that's gonna have a guy like Matherin come off of Indiana and go be the man on the Las Vegas Gamblers or something like that. I think that's more likely. Like there's gonna be guys in the NBA, Jalen Williams, who are gonna be able to like the the last time they had an expansion, I believe it was like what Vancouver and then
Toronto.
Toronto, and I believe you
I
had
want
to
to
put
say Toronto took Marcus Camby in the draft.
you took. I think the league had to give up. You had to put a few players on the trade block, what have you.
Well,
So I
it was
think
messed up too because there was an article that I read about a year ago. This is obviously old, but Toronto actually had won the odds, like in the lottery, so they would have got Allen Iverson, but there was a rule that the expansion teams couldn't get the top pick or something like that.
well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Sucks to be them. But yeah, so I think the expansion is gonna do it's gonna get a guy who is second up and coming star, or maybe a very explosive guy off the bench who's probably gonna do to get paid soon, like a Jabari Smith reach, at a
Oh,
couple years to reach up. I think it's going to be those kind of players that are going to get an opportunity to get drafted to these, whether it's 2 or 4 expansion teams. Maybe the college players, it's the same boat for the college players. Like, yo, I can just stay here and get this NIL money. So I don't really
um,
need to go to the NBA.
so Mr. Logical. We got breaking news.
A word?
Drew Holiday traded to the Portland Trailblazers
Oh
for,
man, they trying
for
to.
Anthony Simons and 2 second-round draft picks.
Is that official or is
That
that
is
a
official.
meme
No, it's on
from
ESPN.com.
Shams?
Yep. There you have it.
Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks.
See, I was just talking about how Anthony Simons should get traded like what, not even 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, and he's landed a good spot.
See?
Just for Portland to buy Drew Holiday out,
Probably.
because I can't. That's the thing is like for. Let me check out Simon's salary while since we got this
But yeah,
breaking news live on our show.
yeah, there you go. So another guy that I like late in this draft, could be the steal of the draft is Maxime Reynard. He went to Stanford, center, stretch shooter, 9'2" wingspan. Was killing it at the combine. So, I really like him a lot. He's probably still gonna go late first round though. So, I got him probably going to Phoenix at 29. Maybe if the Nets want to grab him at 27 if they keep their picks.
Let me
But
see, because
another
all we can see is 18. You want
but
to scroll down?
but another player that I'm not sold on, since I was just talking about him, is Liam McNeely. From UConn. He was a high ballyhooed freshman. I've always wanted to use that word. He was a ballyhooed freshman, and I don't want to blame him. Like UConn was just a utter failure as a team last year. They just had a bunch of talent that just was there because UConn could get talent. So
Yeah.
I don't want to judge him just based off of that year, but I wasn't really impressed. I was expecting some kind of Gordon Hayward kind of guy, and instead, I got NBA Adam Morrison. So, like I don't know how that works. But
yeah, I don't think Portland's gonna be able to. I think they're gonna have to keep Drew Holiday. He has 3 years, 2 years left, and then another
they
year
could
as a
always
player
flip
option.
him. They could always flip him.
Can you do that though?
That's the
I don't
thing
think
that
you could do that. Oh, you can do that because they did it to
but I need
Schroeder.
to read up on it though, because I know that there's some players that you trade and you have to have for 60 days, but then there are some players that you could flip, and I don't know what the distinction is that makes them flippable.
Or maybe it's a good move to bring some defensive intensity, some intelligence. It's a good move for
Teach those
Boston
young guys.
because Anthony Simon only has 1 year left on his deal at $27 million. So unless he's looking for an extension, I don't know what those details look like, but 27 million, and Drew Holiday was getting 32. And like I said, those second round picks that they just throw in, that's why I'm not understanding why the second round is on the complete second day. But I guess you just want to get guys on TV. You want to get Stephen A. Smith and Richard Jefferson and Perk and Malika and all these people talking about basketball for 2 days, or Jay Billis. But it just seems like it's gonna be a lot of names that we don't know that won't show up on our TVs ever,
Right.
in the second round. So that's always like, but I guess you gotta do something. Brooklyn has a lot of picks. They're just in a bad spot.
Right.
It's like the equivalent of having 47 wins. It's like, yeah, you had a good year, but it doesn't really benefit you. Having 19, 26, 27, It's like, yeah, like it's just they're all crapshoot spots.
36. They got 36 as
And
well.
36. I'm just saying, like in the first round, like having
Yeah.
having was it 6 or 9? What was it? Scroll it back.
They got 8.
8, 19, 26, 27. Like theoretically, in the first round of any professional draft, you should be able to get 4 starters. And the likelihood, because of the way of the NBA and the way they treat young guys and the way the expectation they set for these players that they draft, they probably won't. They might get 1, maybe 2, but top 27 NBA prospects, especially with the game being as global as it is, you should get 4 starters and they won't.
Right. But this guy, I would love to see this guy go to Miami. But I got a feeling that if he's around at 24, the smart team will take him. Walter Clayton, the most outstanding player in the Final Four. Played for Rick Pitino at Iona, transferred to Florida, became a national champion. I see some Jamal Murray in there. A lot of the experts are seeing a bigger Jalen Brunson. You know, um, he's a 39% three-point shooter. He sees the big shot, takes the big shot. He's one of those guys. He's not necessarily a ball hog, but when the game is on the line, he wants the ball. I like that for Miami if they could get him, but Miami always does something odd, for whatever reason. So, I could see Miami taking somebody like Will Riley, who is another one of my bust candidates, out of Illinois. He had a whole lot of hype coming out of high school. He's 6'8", freshman, averaged 12 points for Illinois. He was on the team with Yaki Onis and, 33% three-point shooter. He just seems like a Miami Heat guy in that vein of a Jaime Jaquez. Like, he reminds me a lot of that type of player that Miami just seems to be like, you know what? What do we need good players for? We just need dudes that hustle.
Like a guy like Jimmy
Hey,
Butler, where
yeah.
you expect them to just do everything for you.
Yeah. So that's why, like, when I look at that, it makes me wonder what Miami's goal is, because they tried to get into Kevin Durant sweepstakes. They ended up, I believe it was Terry Rozier, Wiggins, and the Suns wanted Khalil Ware, and I'm glad they didn't add him to the trade. But I think they were looking at lost my train of thought. But another guy that I like for Miami, if it comes down to it, is my guy from St. Joe's, Rasheer Fleming. Rasheer Fleming, saying I think he has a long career ahead of him. I think that, 39% from 3, saying 15-9. He is athletic. He can do it all on the basketball court. So he fits the Miami mold, but he might be too good for him because, that's how they roll.
Yeah.
But I like Walter Clayton to them. Thomas Sorber is another one that I like out of Georgetown. Only thing I don't like, he's coming off the foot injury. He's 6'10" with the 7'6" wingspan. Added a little playmaking to his game. So I think that he would be a good fit for Phoenix as well. If Phoenix could get him, but I just don't think he'll be on the board that late for them to get him with the second pick that they have. Atlanta could get him at 22 maybe, but also keep your eye on Nick Clifford. He had the big game against Maryland in the NCAA tournament from Colorado State. That was the whole game where Derek Queen, did he travel? Did he not travel on the game winner? So
NBA rules, I think he was good to go. College rules, he traveled.
yeah,
because you get the NBA rules, you get the gather step, which is essentially one full step, and then the 2 subsequent steps. I believe high school and college, the gather first step counts as one, and then two, and then you gotta let the ball go.
Yeah, then you got Adu Thero. He started at Kentucky, was part of Calipari's mass exodus to Arkansas. I just don't know what to think about him. Like there's times where I look at him and I say, could he be a Lou Dort type? Like he's not as big as Lou Dort as far as like the muscles and everything, but can he be that type of plus defender that will annoy the other team's best player and chase around guards? He's a junior, only shooting 25% from three. So I can't imagine that, you're going to see dividends on that improving. Like if he was a freshman, maybe you got a little bit more room of, hey, let's get him in here with these coaches and do this. But he's been shooting like this all of his life in 3 years in college. So I
Yeah,
don't know how much better that's going to get, even if it becomes decent. So, but I like him a lot. A lot of people like Drake Powell out of North Carolina, in that Harrison Barnes kind of vein. He's going to play some defense, and, offense and work, but high enough upside that teams might take a chance. But the guy that I like a lot out of Creighton, Ryan Kalkbrenner, I was thinking that a team like Boston could draft him to be the Porzingis replacement if he ends up moving on. I mean, he's only 34% from three, but at about 7-1, that can be potentially worked on, and that's good enough, I think. I mean, Wemby's only like a 33% shooter, and he still takes about 6 or 7 a game. But
yeah,
he's not slow-footed in the way that Zach Edey is on defense. He's not going to blow your mind with his athleticism, but he's got a little bit more than Zach Edey. So I would like to see that fit him in Boston. But that's, like I said, dependent on Porzingis not being there. Because now that Drew Holiday's gone, we've been talking about how they need to get under the aprons. So
yeah,
somebody's got to go. I know they've been getting calls on Derek White, but I imagine you want to keep Derek White.
yeah.
So,
Porzingis has 30 million due to him in 25, 26,
yeah,
and Derek White is only at 28, and younger, a little bit more reliable. Actually, no, Derek White's older, but he just he's not as injury prone, doesn't miss a lot of
right.
time. And Porzingis is, granted, he's only 29. It seems like he's been in the league forever, but he's only 29. And I
Well,
think
can we
he
figure out what
will
was
draw
wrong
an
with him?
appeal. Me, I don't know,
I,
man.
you know what I'm
Somebody give
saying?
him
Like,
some arsenic.
yeah, I don't know what the hell he had, like just that was just nuts. You know what I'm saying? But a couple of guys that I like, that probably won't be first rounders, from Tennessee, Chaz Lanier, coming from Tennessee, he's going to play some defense. He hits big shots. I'm not necessarily high on this guy, I guess, but I just want to see how his career pans out. But Janai Broom, he only took 2 of the 6 Player of the Year awards that Cooper Flagg didn't get, but not even projected in the first round because he can't jump. So, so we'll see what kind of player that he turns into. But I do absolutely like Cam Jones, from Marquette. He's got some of that. No, I'm not gonna say that. He kind of reminds me of Marcus Smart, but the college version. He can put up points quick, fast, in a hurry. What is that going to look like? Hunter Salas from Gonzaga, shot taker, shot maker, nothing more, nothing less. Mr. Logical's favorite inbounder, Sion James. You remember him?
That's my guy.
Yeah, Sion James. I think that he's one of those guys that successful teams just have. Like in that, like he doesn't shoot it as well, but like in that Neesmith kind of way. You know what I mean? Like he just a gritty, grinding, will play defense, will do what's necessary besides make a good inbound pass. He'll probably be frustrated in that Ginobili kind of way. And then let's see here. Oh, what you think about this, Mr. Logical?
First round for Connect, another Connect wouldn't want to be in a room. It's just a bunch. Nah, they didn't really showcase him enough. And if I'm a team trading for Connect, I'm not going to offer more than a couple second rounders just because you don't want him.
Well, I think you could get a first rounder, but you wouldn't get Connect by himself. You would have to put Rui in there, or something else along those
Yeah,
lines.
he'll be part of a package, but like him
Yeah,
straight up, no.
not him straight up. Yeah, but if I'm thinking about this, if I'm a team, like I said, New Orleans needs a little bit of everything. So, saying if I was New Orleans and they're talking about potentially trading Trey Murphy, so why not? He fits right. I mean, I doubt the Lakers would trade with Boston, but he fits right in there. Another guy that likes to shoot the ball. Phoenix could use him. Orlando could probably use him, but he would probably be coming off the bench there because they already got Wagner and Bancaro in the front court. Minnesota, could Minnesota be a fit? Like if they lose Julius Randle, you bring in this guy on a rookie contract and let it rip. So those
Yeah,
are a couple
but
things.
I think the Lakers ruined his confidence, but also ruined his value. I don't know why I get it, but he's done the whole journeyman in college. Maybe he felt like he found a home in LA because it was a good pick at 17. He's going to get his opportunity. Maybe JJ just coached him like they said, there's like a disconnect between certain eras of players. Maybe he's coached them in a different style. He's not really getting through to him because he is very demonstrative, very loud, and he cusses, and it's just a lot of yelling. It just doesn't seem like with this new ownership group coming in that's going to be sustainable going forward. He definitely can't cuss Luke out. Like if I just
Right.
spent 10 billion on this team, I can't have you on TV cussing out uh my best player, considering he could just wrap it up and leave as well. So, but yeah, with Dalton Connect, I think the Lakers should do their best to implement him in the system because that's what they need. They needed somebody to stretch the floor. You play good enough team defense, and he won't be a liability. He's big enough not to be a liability. Not like he's 6'2" and he's gonna get overplayed. Like get him out there, run some plays for him. You know what he does well. He's a catch and shoot guy, or he's a little bit off the dribble. Give him his moment. Let him run the front. Let him run the second unit. I just think that these teams are giving up on players too quick because they have a legendary player like LeBron, a legendary player like Luca, and I think
Well, that
teams
legendary
get
player
these.
like Braun don't like to develop players. He don't got time for that.
That's a byproduct of like what's going wrong with him and the Lakers because they both entities between LeBron and his camp and his philosophy and how he plays basketball and the Lakers and the way they keep going through coaches is like none of you are developing anything. You're just expecting to plug and play, and it's not working, and it hasn't worked since 2020.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to do it again, and they're going to try to plug Bronny in. And I'm not sure it'll work because he is undersized. He can be overworked defensively. Just all the effort in the world. But if he gets switched on to SGA, who's a solid 6'6", and works that free throw line extended, you know, contact jump shot, there's nothing you can do about that when you're 6'2". Even if you're in the best position, you know what's coming. Just the turnaround is nothing you do at 6'2". Dalton Connect at 6'7", he can impact those kind of shots.
Yeah. And then last two teams for me, um, Orlando, you know, um, Nolan Traore maybe, 6'4" point guard out of France because you still need somebody to distribute the ball. Like Jalen Suggs is not a traditional point guard, obviously. He's more of a scorer that's been forced into the point guard role because of the bad decisions Orlando's made over the years. So,
Yeah.
Maybe you look there, maybe Memphis looks at Neat Clifford that I brought up earlier. Maybe they look at Liam McNeely. Like, I think if you're Memphis, you probably got to go wing at least to start out. We can argue about which wing they should go with, but I would even say that if Carter Bryant fell there, because like I said, I'm not as high on him, but if he fell there, that might be one of the better spots for him to end up. But I think a lot of people are looking at him as a first, like in the top 10. So I don't know if I would take him there, but we'll see. Or if Memphis could get their hands on Cedric Coward, I just don't think I just don't think Coward's going to be there. So
the NBA used to be the league that played the rookies. Now the NFL is like, we drafting a guy, we're gonna play him both ways. Drafting the quarterback, we don't care what round it is, we're gonna start him. We don't care if his hands are small, if there's no veteran in the locker room to lead. We're putting the rookies out there because we're paying them a lot of money. The NBA, ever since they restructured like the rookie contracts, it's just basically like, you know what? We'll eat this $26 million over a couple of years and we'll get rid of the guy before we have to really pay him big money. We'll give him his $13 million and his $14 million as a top 10 pick. And, we'll see where it goes. But we're going to use that person to try to get this haul, or try to get a Paul George package or Kevin Durant package or a Kyrie Irving package, because it's such a win now league. But if you look at the last 7 champions, it's been different teams.
Right.
Different teams, different formats. But for the most part, like I said, Indiana and Oklahoma City were the deepest teams in the league. They played their young guys that way. In these moments, these guys didn't clam up. You miss open shots. It happens. But OKC's young player stepped up. Casey Wallace was literally, because he's played defense all year, he was like, oh, I'm just going to grab until they call it. But if you waited until, like we talked about with the Knicks, because they didn't have any depth, because they don't play any young guys. And that's why, like I said, that's why I think these guys are going back to college, because it's like, I'm not going to go to the NBA and sit on the bench for 82 games in a hoodie when I could just play 32 to 34 games in college
and still get paid.
Whatever. Like, even if you only got $100 grand at 20, plus all the free stuff you're getting anyway as a player of this team.
You just walk up in the spot, they're like, your money's no good here.
Your money's no good here. Or you go to a Jordan school, you get all the Jordan PEs. You go to a Nike school, you get all the Nike, Adidas, wherever you go. You get to see all the college football games. You get to live that life, and you're only playing 30, 35 games. So I could see guys just backing out, getting this NIL money until, the NBA starts losing their legends, until Chris Paul retires, until LeBron retires, until KD retires, until Brad Bill, Booker, Dame Lillard, Giannis, Embiid, all these guys really start to make room for the up and coming superstars. Then I think you'll see a lot more guys trying to jump into the draft, because teams are going to need to fill it. Milwaukee's going to be out of superstar the next couple of years. Denver might not have a superstar the next couple of years. Portland doesn't have one right now. Golden State's going to be out of a superstar. The Lakers, because they have Luka, they're probably locked in for the next 5 or 6 years with an actual superstar on the team. The Clippers are going to be without like a face of their franchise that they can put on the marquee that ESPN will, try to sell, at TNT or NBC, whoever's putting games on are going to try to sell. So hopefully these guys get their shot, but it's just unfortunate the way that the NBA has kind of their business model and how they ignore like the development piece. They say they have the G League, but they don't bring these guys up.
Yeah, the G League's just there for like, hey, yo, I got people hurt and I need replacements. Like, I just need to fill out a basketball team tonight.
Yeah, I got this coaching waiting, and I want to see if he's any good. We'll let him coach 35, 40 G League games.
Yeah. So, but on that note, y'all, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. We love you. We will be back on Friday, and of course, we'll be wrapping up NBA draft coverage, and then it's almost football season. Don't fall asleep now. We got a few months to go. But he is the world renowned, the world famous, the one and only, Mr. Logical. I am your unorthodox statistician 2-5. Don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
But do like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. Grab you a liquid death while you're at it. Blueberry buzzsaw. Do it. See you in a few days. Enjoy.
Peace.
Peace.